Okay, so this presentation is like a new version of the one I presented at CSVConf a little over a month ago. I'm going to talk about how we use Apache Airflow and FastETL to integrate data sources, publish open data, and also we use frictionless data a little bit here and there. As for myself, I have background in mathematics and computer science, knowledge management, IT management, natural language processing. But over the last few years, I have been working in data engineering. I have a background also in open data. I'm one of the people who started the open data policy in Brazil and federal government in 2010 until 2018. I am civil servant since 2004. You can also find the slide deck on my website on this address. And I must also mention the other members of the team who helped made FastETL. Some of them, like Eduardo and Vitor and Marcelo, are here. So when we go into questions, maybe if there's, it's good that if there's something I can't answer, they can help me, of course. We work at the Secretariat for Management and Innovation, and that is in the Ministry of Management and Innovation of Public Services in Brazil. We take care of the data lake there, and we ingest data from several data sources. And this data is useful not only to build dashboards and make data analysis and all sorts of things. About FastETL, it is a free and open source plugin for Apache Airflow, and it has features that are useful for making ETL pipelines, or ELT also, which is some discussion nowadays, whether or not you first load and then transform. We do that a lot as well. It's called FastETL, not because it's particularly optimized for performance, but it speeds up data pipeline development process, because the things that we do most often, we can just call the library and get development done a lot faster. So that's why I made it, and also to reuse code. We have been using some of that code since 2019. So if you look at the repository in GitHub, you'll see that the history goes a long way. But only recently, only this year, we have actually made sure that it is more usable to people outside the organization, like, for instance, translating README and other documents to English, and also doc strings and things like that. We also love free and open source software, and we'd like to share knowledge with other teams, expand the network, our network of developers, and also to get feedback and contributions to FastETL itself. About Apache Airflow, I am aware that maybe not everyone is familiar with it. It's a free and open source software for scheduling and orchestrating tasks. Usually that has to do with data. They are organized in directed acyclic graphs. So that means it always flows in one direction. You can't have cycles, loops. And we chose Airflow because of the active community. If you look at GitHub, you'll see that it's very often has new versions, new releases, and the issues are very dynamic. And also because we chose Airflow because it gives visibility into the ETL process and gives us notifications when something breaks. We get a link to the log and can look up whatever caused the pipeline to break. And we use it along with FastETL to synchronize data sources from other databases in the data lake. Data sources could be databases, could be spreadsheets, other files. We also publish open data on the Open Data portal. We notify people about publications in the official gazette, the National Official Gazette. When someone wants to know if like the name of a person appeared there, you get a notification of this list of people. You get a report. The notifications can be sent by email or Slack. We also manage our sprints with Scrum in Trello, and we also read the Trello API to manage that. FastETL features full of incremental replication of tables. It supports SQL Server, Postgres, and also MySQL only for sources, not destination databases for now. It can load data from Google Sheets and also spreadsheets on other places like in Windows sharing, SMB or Samba. We can extract CSV from SQL. It can clean data using some data patching tasks. Like I will give it some more concrete examples later for mapping messy geographical coordinates, for instance. We can query the National Gazette. We can use OpenStreetRouting machine to calculate distances between 2 points in the map using the OpenStreetMap map. It can use CCAN's API or dados.gov.br, the Brazilian data portal API, to update the dataset metadata. I mentioned both of them because they recently changed the API and we can no longer use the CCAN API there. It's a different API. We support both. We use frictionless data packages to write the dictionaries, like in text, open document text formats. That's something that people often want to see. I have an example about that as well later. So here's an example of code to create an operator in Airflow to copy from one database to another. We just define the task ID, that connection ID, the schema in table, and whether or not you want to truncate the destination table, some optional things like if you want to copy the table comments are a table description or a column descriptions, and that has a lot to do with table schema in Frictionless. You'll see that later as well. And how many chunks will divide the job should divide the reading and writing of data. So that's what's supported in the B2GB operator. Another example, you can also extract from a database to CSV, and likewise just tell the parameters and it creates the operator for you in Airflow. And here's an example on how we can create Rodot. Rodot is a sister project for FastETL that generates these notifications. When something comes up in the official gazette, you just tell the terms you want to search, It can be directly on the YAML file uh, in which you configure the searcher, or you can read it from a database, and you can also define where you want to send the report to, whether by email or also Slack is supported, Discord as well. Here's an example of a report I received when I wanted to be notified about occurrences of open government and access to information law. And then the report comes with the direct link to uh, the document, to the law or bylaw where the term, the keyword was mentioned. We can also copy data from Google Sheets to a database. For that, there's the G sheet to DB operator. Again, it just tell it the parameters like the spreadsheet ID, sheet name, and the connection ID, and which schema and table in the database. We can also add a custom column. For instance, this is often used to create backups of spreadsheets, and you might want to add a column on when that backup was created. And just show you some more examples of the FastETL functionality, we will showcase this project called TaxiGov. It's a ride system for public officials using taxis, not for commute, but for going from the office to another office for meetings. It's not allowed to for going home or coming to work. There have been over 9,000 rides since 2016. We have over 35,000 users in all of the federal government and the whole country of Brazil. And it's used by 163 public organizations on not only federal governments, but also local governments. And what's interesting about this case is how many data sources we have. We have 29 different databases from 5 different companies, which are the suppliers for these services. And it has many fields of unstructured text, just loose text, something that people write on the field, and we must figure out the actual value that should go in the field. So we have some data mapping from this messy data. So we see how we can do that with FastETL. We collect data from those 29 sources, then clean it with FastETL patchwork and load it into a unified schema. So 29 different data sources with different schemas, and at the end we have a single schema. And we also, for open data, we must take out the parts of data that has privacy restrictions or some sensitive data. And the whole process is finished in under an hour. And here are this schematics is something that Airflow shows us. It's not something I have drawn here, but something that Airflow gives us with its datasets feature. Here are the databases of origin, of destination, and the processes, and you can navigate between those and the DAGs, the pipelines that do this. And this is just a portion, a small piece of one pipeline. It's the one that cleans data using the patchwork from FastETL. And here we can, for instance, clean the geographical coordinates. Some have wrong decimals separator. They're all text fields in the original databases. Sometimes they have a wrong signal of the latitude and longitude, or values are multiplied by some factor. They have the decimal separator in wrong places. And this is the code we use for data patching. It uses some heuristics like trying to figure out which the actual latitude and longitude numbers should be based on the messy number you find in the data. And this is another example of a data cleaner that uses a mapping that we do that mapping in a Google spreadsheet. And periodically, this is only useful, by the way, if you have new values only not very often, because it's like the values are more or less stable, and only like once a month or once a week you get new values, then you can use this kind of thing. All the values happening on the database are appear on one column, and the other column you select the value that should be mapped to. So this class on FastETL helps with that. You just pass the ID of the spreadsheet, and then it maps the value. Here's another example of using the metadata from table descriptions for copying table descriptions and column descriptions that FastETL supports. It's the table comments class. You can use this to read the descriptions from Postgres or Microsoft SQL Server. And we use this. This is an example that is for open data. We read the column descriptions from the database and then record a tabular data package that is with frictionless data. And that is a table schema, YAML, there on the left. And there on the right is the data dictionary that is created with the document template data dictionary operator. You just pass the parameters to the operator, and it creates a document for you just with the information it read from the tabular data package. And this is the pipeline for open data publication of TaxiGov. And here's an example of using the frictionless framework to read this open data. You just import the package class and pass the URL, and then you have all those resources, like one for all rides in the last 7 days. It's like a lighter data set for someone working with data visualizations. We'll see an example of that just on the next slide. We can also some of those resources have the entire history of rides, and one of them, passageiros solicitantes, this is the one that has aggregate data that shows how many rides each person individually, each public servant has used, but only if that they have been more than 3 or more on the month, because that was requirement that we do not individually, these rides are individually identified there, but the name of the person is not. But on this other table of aggregate data, we do have the name of each person and the amount of the value of the rides in the monetary value, the distance they travel, and the amount of rides they took in each month. And this example is my own name. I searched there. And this is an example of visualization that I did with the lighter table, which contains only 7 days. And it's a heat map of points of origin and destination. And this is updated dynamically every day. So this is the presentation, but actually this is an iframe of this more complete visualization here that you can see. And in this visualization, we can also see like individual rides and information on the justification for like the reason that they travel, the time of the timestamp, and other information. like if it was a meeting or to carry documents or things like that. For the FastETL framework, you can find it at this GitHub repository. We can also install it with pip, but we must first install those library to your environment, because to support SQL Server in Python, you also need them. And here are some things I use in presentation and my contact information. So if you have any questions or feedback after you start experimenting with FastETL, I'd be glad to address them.